staying in the hotel, the parking is $5. If you are in and out like myself, it's $10. $5 for the morning, $5 for the afternoon. We're asking that everybody please go to the front desk, pay your parking, get your validated ticket, so we can all leave happily at 3:30 or 4. Otherwise, you remember the traffic jam if you were here yesterday. If you weren't, you have to wait for the credit card to go through. It's just a longer process, so we appreciate that. Also, hotel. If you are staying in the hotel, there is no late checkout. So please make sure that you take care of that so you can enjoy the conference and not worry about perhaps they'll give me late checkout. They will not. So I want to make sure you take care of that. And we are recording, so if you could go ahead and silence your cell phone, I would appreciate that. We are going to hold questions until the end, and I'll come by with a microphone at that point, and so we can get all of the questions recorded. Everything that you see within the conference can be found on the TWC website. So if there's a session perhaps that you didn't get to or you were double booked, I encourage you to go. They're all on the website and you'll be able to attend all. If you need CEU credit or CRC credit, the table is right outside of our door, and please make sure this session does count for that credit. So if you would go ahead and take care of that. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Mary York.
Thank you, Tracy. I feel like she should just moderate the panel. She's really good at this. So thanks for joining us today. This I'm hoping is going to be an interactive discussion. We had a chance to visit, together as a panel before we came today, and we thought, gosh, we hope time doesn't get away from us because we have so many exciting things to talk about. But first, I'm going to introduce our panelists. So starting over here, we have Dr. Veronique Tran, who serves as the founding Vice Provost of the School of Manufacturing and Industrial Technology at Dallas College. Dr. Tran has served more than 20 years of experience in higher education, research, and industry, and provides leadership over both academic and technical programs, including faculty, professional development, and learning support services. She was selected for the 2019-2020 Aspen Rising President's Fellowship, hosted by Aspen Institute's College Excellence Program. Whew, long sentence. Dr. Tran immigrated with her family through the refugee program at the end of the Vietnam War. She began her first-generation college journey at North Harris Community College and received her BS in chemical engineering from the University of Houston in 1991. She worked as an engineer for Shell Western Exploration and Production before returning to graduate school to pursue her PhD in biomedical engineering in the joint program in BME at UT Southwestern Medical School at Dallas and UT Arlington. She completed her postdoctoral research fellowship in drug delivery at Yale University and helped build the biomedical engineering program at the University of Houston. She's done a lot, y'all. In 2006, she joined Rice University as the Executive Director of Departmental Advancement in Bioengineering. Dr. Tran returned to U of H in 2007 as the founding director of the Quality Enhancement Plan, focused on undergraduate discovery while serving as a change management consultant for public and private universities, seeking guidance on their, that's a really long acronym, I don't even know what to say, SACSCOCQEP. It sounds really impressive. From 2016 to 2017, Dr. Tran served as the founding dean of math and sciences at Lone Star College, University Park, where she led the division to record enrollment growth, facilitated innovative use of technology in teaching, and led the design team for the Center for Science and Innovation. She joined Lee College in 2017 as the Vice President of Instruction. Dr. Tran and her husband, Tim, enjoy the outdoors and have 2 sons, I think one of which attends the University of Texas at Dallas, and the other attends the University of Houston. So there you go.
Okay, panel, who wants to follow that?
No.
Mine's on one
Yeah,
sentence.
yeah.
My apologies. I was out of the country and my admin assistant sent the lengthy bio instead of the short bio.
Yeah. We did not hear about her.
We're staying in the hotel. The parking is $5. If you are in and out like myself, it's $10. $5 for the morning, $5 for the afternoon. We're asking that everybody please go to the front desk, pay your parking, get your validated ticket so we can all leave happily at 3:30 or 4. Otherwise, you remember the traffic jam if you were here yesterday. If you weren't, you have to wait for the credit card to go through. It's just a longer process, so we appreciate that. Also, hotel. If you are staying in the hotel, there is no late checkout. So please make sure that you take care of that so you can enjoy the conference and not worry about perhaps they'll give me late checkout. They will not. So I want to make sure you take care of that. And we are recording, so if you could go ahead and silence your cell phone, I would appreciate that. We are going to hold questions until the end, and I'll come by with a microphone at that point, and so we can get all of the questions recorded. Everything that you see within the conference can be found on the TWC website. So if there's a session perhaps that you didn't get to or you were double booked, I encourage you to go. They're all on the website and you'll be able to attend all. If you need CEU credit or CRC credit, the table is right outside of our door, and please make sure this session does count for that credit. So if you would go ahead and take care of that. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Mary York.
Thank you, Tracy. I feel like she should just moderate the panel. She's really good at this. So thanks for joining us today. This I'm hoping is going to be an interactive discussion. We had a chance to visit, together as a panel before we came today, and we thought, gosh, we hope time doesn't get away from us because we have so many exciting things to talk about. But first, I'm going to introduce our panelists. So starting over here, we have Dr. Veronique Tran, who serves as the founding Vice Provost of the School of Manufacturing and Industrial Technology at Dallas College. Dr. Tran has served more than 20 years of experience in higher education, research, and industry, and provides leadership over both academic and technical programs, including faculty, professional development, and learning support services. She was selected for the 2019-2020 Aspen Rising President's Fellowship, hosted by Aspen Institute's College Excellence Program. Whew, long sentence. Dr. Tran immigrated with her family through the refugee program at the end of the Vietnam War. She began her first-generation college journey at North Harris Community College and received her BS in chemical engineering from the University of Houston in 1991. She worked as an engineer for Shell Western Exploration and Production before returning to graduate school to pursue her PhD in biomedical engineering in the joint program in BME at UT Southwestern Medical School at Dallas and UT Arlington. She completed her postdoctoral research fellowship in drug delivery at Yale University and helped build the biomedical engineering program at the University of Houston. She's done a lot, y'all. In 2006, she joined Rice University as the Executive Director of Departmental Advancement in Bioengineering. Dr. Tran returned to U of H in 2007 as the founding director of the Quality Enhancement Plan, focused on undergraduate discovery while serving as a change management consultant for public and private universities, seeking guidance on their, that's a really long acronym, I don't even know what to say, SACSCOCQEP. It sounds really impressive. From 2016 to 2017, Dr. Tran served as the founding dean of math and sciences at Lone Star College, University Park, where she led the division to record enrollment growth, facilitated innovative use of technology in teaching, and led the design team for the Center for Science and Innovation. She joined Lee College in 2017 as the Vice President of Instruction. Dr. Tran and her husband, Tim, enjoy the outdoors and have 2 sons. I think one of which attends the University of Texas at Dallas, and the other attends the University of Houston. So there you go.
Okay, panel, who wants to follow that?
No,
Mine's on one
yeah,
sentence.
yeah.
My apologies. I was out of the country and my admin assistant sent the lengthy bio instead of the short bio.
Yeah. We did not hear about her career K through 12. I mean, if we wanted to need to add that. No, she's obviously very accomplished, and we're lucky to have her here with us today. But who's going to follow that, Eric? You're following that.
And I didn't do any of that.
Eric Batten is the Workforce Development Manager for Texas Instruments. In his role, he is focused on building and expanding programs for students to be highly qualified to work in the most technologically advanced manufacturing facilities in the world. He has been at TI for 17 years, spending most of his career in education technology while moving to the talent acquisition team a year ago. Some of his favorite projects include developing partnerships with school districts, community college, and universities to expand STEM college opportunities for underrepresented and underserved populations around the country, collaborating with school districts, community colleges, and universities to develop winning grant applications around STEM access and success, and expanding career and technical education to strengthen pathways for students into STEM careers, especially underrepresented populations in engineering and advanced manufacturing. I'm going to go back over here and introduce Kristie Caviness, who is the Manager of Employer Engagement and Community Outreach for TWC in the Outreach and Employer Initiatives Division. The EECO team is directly responsible for the Skills Development Fund, Self-Sufficiency Fund, High Demand Job Training, and Texas Industry Partnership. The primary goal for these grants is to connect businesses and our partners to provide needed training for Texans to stimulate the Texas economy. Kristie brings over 25 years of extensive experience in marketing, brand development and management, promotions, and corporate operations with her proven leadership skills. She's worked for a variety of business types, including economic development and the travel and tourism industry. A Texas Tech University graduate. Okay, we don't have any else. Yeah. With a BA in Advertising and Public Relations, she enjoys all things red and black. Kristie resides in Georgetown with her husband, Randall. Okay, last but not least, because Janie is here serving multiple, yeah, it is the shortest, but it is packed with information. Janie Bates is the Executive Director of Workforce Solutions Texoma. Ms. Bates has 45 years of experience providing employment and training services to Texoma. She currently serves as the chair of the Sherman Economic Development Corporation, a member of the City of Denison Homelessness Committee, the Texoma Family Shelter, and the Texoma Manufacturing Committee. Janie is a graduate of Southeastern Oklahoma of Sherman, and Amy Abshire of McKinney. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Okay. And most importantly, they have 5 amazing grandchildren. That's right. That's awesome. All right. So to get started, Janie, I am actually going to go. No, I'm not going to go to you first. I'm going to go to Eric first.
Okay.
So we are here to talk about a particular project, but more than that, we're going to talk about how this project translates to other things around the state, other things that are happening in workforce development. So as we're talking through specific questions related to Texas Instruments, I hope that you will keep that in mind, and especially for questions at the end. Certainly you can ask questions about this particular project, but also think about how these things might apply in your region. So Eric, can you tell us about TI's expansion and how you ultimately decided to locate in Texas?
Definitely. So, again, I've worked for Texas Instruments for now 18 years. And we are significantly expanding our manufacturing in Texas. So if you'll think back, we've been through a little bit of working from home, supply chain issues, lots of things like that globally. So we looked as a company in where do we need to invest to expand our manufacturing, because there is demand for semiconductors. So you've seen it on the news, you've seen it, worldwide. We are positioned because we have manufactured in Texas for many years. So matter of fact, TI, in 1958, Jack Kilby invented the integrated circuit, which is the foundation for all electronics that you interact with today. So you will see a lot of people talk about TI as the calculator company. It's because the calculator is the only personal electronic that's on the market with TI on the outside. But if you take apart the electronics that you interact with every day, you will see TI parts in those electronics. We are an analog and embedded processing company. 65% of our revenue comes from automotive and industrial automation. And so if you think of it, analog basically is if there's information from the outside world that needs to be converted so digital chips can understand it, that's what analog is. I am not an engineer. That's the layman's terms of what analog is.
I mean, we could go to Dr. Tran and she could probably tell us everything about it.
But if you think about, for every digital chip, there's 10 or 12 analog chips around it. So we made, in the early 2000s, we made a decision as a company to move into that. So when we're looking at expanding our manufacturing, there's lots of factors that go into that. One of the factors that was the big factor was we already had manufacturing in Sherman. And so setting up logistics, setting up transportation of product in and out of fabs, lots of things go into that. But also the existing relationship we had with the state of Texas. And so the Sherman Economic Development Council, as well as Workforce Solutions, as well as all of the organizations that needed to be part of putting a proposal together, because we were looking all over the world as to where we were going to expand our manufacturing. And so when it comes down to it, the existing relationship with the state of Texas and also the existing relationships we had with Sherman were a huge factor in that decision, as well as we had invested in the land to actually build the expanded manufacturing in Sherman in the 60s. So just to put it in perspective, we're building 4 manufacturing fabs in Sherman. It is 24 football fields. So if you can imagine this expansion of that. We also recently just expanded our manufacturing in Richardson, Texas. We had our Fab 1, and we expanded and built our Fab 2, which is about 30% larger. And so setting up the logistics for products in and out of Richardson and also setting up logistics for products in and out of Sherman were some of the factors that played into that. But more importantly, it's the support of the Texas Workforce Commission as well as other people that are in workforce. And those existing relationships were critical for us. And now we're pushing the boundaries on what can we do with those organizations, because we're projected to hire in the next 5 to 7 years 16,000 people. And so what that factors is, that factors new jobs, that factors attrition, that factors in, we also have a workforce that is moving closer to retirement than being a longer term employee. And so therefore all of those factors, and I'm also going to share, that's information that we have today. The markets go up, the markets go down, that, there's lots of factors that play into that. But when we're talking about this Texoma Megaregion, we're talking about, if you think about us hiring people, there's also suppliers, there's other people in the area that are having to hire people too. And so we're having to look at that ecosystem all together. And when we're planning and we're working on things, it's not just what's going to benefit TI, it's what's going to benefit this Megaregion in general. And so that's really the factors that played into that. So that was a long answer, but I feel like you needed to have a little bit of the background there to understand, because that'll put some perspective around the work that we're doing here.
And Eric, not to put you on the spot, I know you just gave us insight into how many people are going to need to be hired. What is the capital investment associated with this project? Significant, right?
So $30 billion is going into Sherman, as well as we have an additional $10 billion that went into Richardson. And then on top of that, we announced 2 months ago that we're also expanding in Lehi, Utah. And so we have one manufacturing fab there, and we're building a second one there. So our total investment is over $50 billion. And this was before the CHIPS Act was announced. So the CHIPS Act is going to help us, but this was investments for our long-term growth before the CHIPS Act was announced. And so we're also very appreciative of the CHIPS Act, as well as all of the work going on in Texas around a Texas CHIPS Act. That's going to help us tremendously, but we also have the demand from our customers for semiconductors. So that investment was announced before this additional funding. So we're so appreciative of all the people working on this additional funding to help us.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. So I think that is a good segue to Sherman Economic Development Corporation. And Janie, I know that a lot of work goes into an economic development project, kind of behind the scenes. But can you tell me a little bit about the role of the Economic Development Corporation and this particular project, and then the sort of convening of different stakeholders around that?
Well, the first thing I'll tell you is that with Eric needing 16,000 people, Workforce Solutions Texoma is currently looking for a cloning machine because that may be the only way we come up with this.
Dr. Tran could probably invent one for you, I'm just saying.
Yes, she probably could. So when we first found out that TI was planning to locate this new fab in Sherman, we had just had the news a year earlier that they were closing the current plant that we have, and there's a little over 300 people working there. So that was a blow to Sherman because we have had TI since the mid-'60s, and it's something we've always been very proud of, been good community partners. So when we found out about it, it was like, oh, wow, we were competing with Singapore. Now, Sherman is a very small place. So you think about Singapore and you're thinking about Sherman. So my president of the SEDCO Economic Development Corporation called me and he said, well, you may be the chair of this organization when we get the single biggest investment in economic development in the state of Texas to date. And I was like, really? Who? And, we were so excited that TI had chosen us as one of their 2 sites to look at. So immediately we started to put together incentive packages. Well, that requires getting the county, the city, the school district, and our local community college all on board for tax abatements. Well, if you've ever done that, nobody wants to give up their tax dollars. So some of them were really excited, and they're like, man, we'll do a 90% abatement for X number of years. Some people were like, oh, no, we're not. So it was a fun time that we had to meet with all these partners. So that was a big part of what economic development did. Workforce is always at the table with our economic developers, even when I'm not the chair of that corporation. So we worked diligently to get all those things put together so that we could offer the best package possible. But we knew we had that 560 acres out there that already belonged to TI. And Eric talked about how that was in the 60s when they bought that land. Land out there right now is going for anywhere from $100,000 to $200,000 an acre. People are selling it by the square foot in many places. So you can see that was a huge thing to already have that land. They didn't have to worry about making it in negotiations or anything like that. Once they started on that project, we have started working with the schools. We met Eric, and he's been great to work with, bringing us into it so that we're working not only with high schools and colleges, we're working with the middle schools as well. And this ties in with what we do with the Workforce Commission's outreach specialist. Our outreach specialist is in those school classrooms every day talking about careers. And TI information that they have given us is being distributed to all those people. So it's just perfect timing that we had that outreach specialist program. We also have an advanced manufacturing program that we're working with. But Eric and I have been going to schools and touring schools. We're right on the Oklahoma state line. My office is probably about 10 minutes to get to the state line. So we have partners there. We work with that workforce board very closely. So Eric has met with them. We brought them all into our office so we could talk to them about what they can be doing. We have a university in Oklahoma that's just 10 minutes away. So those are the things that we have been doing on the economic development side, on the workforce, and we're very fortunate in Texoma that economic development and workforce are very closely connected, and not only with Sherman, but with the other major cities around who have the economic development corporations. So we're able to bring in all of our partners, but it really goes to show that the forward thinking with those outreach specialists is paying off big time for us.
I think I just saw Lori Knight do a wave in the back of the room. Thank you for that, Janie. I think it actually is probably a good pivot then to turn to Dr. Tran. And Dr. Tran, I think Janie started to kind of describe in informal terms this idea of not just a collaboration within Texoma, Texoma Workforce Solutions, Workforce Development Board, but beyond that. So the title of this session is about a megaregion. Can you tell us what a megaregion is? And then can you tell us a little bit about the population of potential trainees in the Texoma megaregion?
Glad to. So a mega region is a combination of regions, right? So of MSAs, counties, and so forth. And one thing that was clear as we were looking at the population demographics, and I'll show you some maps here in a little bit, and I wanted to share this because you can't just describe it, you have to visually see it. So for the Texoma mega region, what that constitutes is the Dallas-Fort Worth MSA, and as well as the Sherman-Denison MSA, which is to the north of that, and then the Ardmore, Durant, Gainesville, Bonham MSA, which reaches into southern Oklahoma, and also includes Johnson and Marshall County. So it's just this North Texas swath in the middle, and so that's what we're defining as the Texoma mega region. And this came about actually, Dallas College hosted a ChipWorks convening where we were trying to kind of pull together different stakeholders to tackle this workforce need in the semiconductor manufacturing industry and realize that we need to expand our definition of the population that we're looking at. And so then that term of the mega region evolved out of those discussions. So I'm going to be sharing a few maps here so that you can visually see the potential trainees that will be able to train for this high-skilled technical work. And this is just initially showing the population growth. So if we only focused on the Sherman-Denison MSA, which is where you see Grayson, up there, then you can see that all the population growth is happening down here in the Dallas-Fort Worth MSA. So the need to define a mega region is clear when you look at where does the population reside, right? If we only focused in on the Sherman-Denison MSA, then you're limiting your pool of potential trainees that could benefit from the jobs that are being developed. And then this is, also a really striking graphic as well because it shows our regional diversity, and you can see that Hispanic is the orange color and yellow is Black and African American. So if you look at this mega region, you see that there's a high density of minority population in the southern Dallas County area that are often underserved, and because you tend to when you're talking about where the jobs are and where the training is, you tend to co-locate the training where the jobs are. And what we're trying to do is take a bigger picture, take a step back and say, well, we want the population here in Southern County to be able to have access to those jobs that are maybe an hour and a half away. And so that's really important to look at with this mega region lens as well, because you're perhaps unintentionally leaving out populations that could benefit from this training, and that don't have access. And then I just wanted to go through some key categories. So veterans, which we're all want to support, and actually they already come with skills that are technical skills that are needed for this work, for the technician training. And you can see here some data here. The darker green colors are the percent with no post-secondary degree. So then when we talk about the potential pool of trainees, these are veterans that have no post-secondary degree that could benefit from the training. These are young adults from 18 to 24. And you can see where those pockets are there. And then adult learners with at least a high school diploma but no higher degree. And so we have a tremendous pool of potential trainees that could benefit from this training that we're going to share a little bit more details with you later. But hopefully this helped you to kind of visualize what we mean by a mega region, and then the different population demographics for Texoma mega region.
Thank you, Dr. Tran. I think that gives us a really good visual of, we know that region of Texas, just like many others, are growing exponentially, but having that understanding of education and diversity is great information. Kristie, I wanted to turn to you as we're talking about how this project and maybe others develop, when your team is involved. I think that much like many other projects, we work with the Governor's Office of Economic Development on projects. Can you give us a little background on how that works?
Sure. So generally speaking, if there is either an existing business or a new business looking to come into the state, or who are already here, obviously, we love to be at the table. And pull it down, sorry. I have no projection. So the governor's office is obviously very active in those cases. So they invite us to the table, and we're able to communicate all of the different workforce programs that we have across the way. So not just training grants, but apprenticeship, VR, AEL. Our outreach team is geared to talk about all different types of these programs. There is also an opportunity when we get further into it to talk about the types of training that they might need and who they are, who those folks are that we've just hired. And from that, we can put together a commitment letter that basically spells out and this is for new businesses only, if the business is coming into the state, we can talk about the different types of training. So from a skills development fund standpoint, how many folks are getting trained, and then we put a kind of a dollar figure to that and provide that commitment letter. It also includes other things like apprenticeship. There's other parts of workforce that are mentioned in the letter as well.
Yeah. Including the services offered through the Workforce Solutions Office.
Yes, absolutely. They're key as well.
Hiring needs and things like that. Yeah. Okay, great. So, Eric, you already gave us a little bit of a glimpse of the thousands upon thousands of people that are going to need to be hired. What are TI's most significant workforce needs, and what's the timeline associated with those?
So just to put a little bit of perspective around those large numbers. So when we announce the expansion in Sherman, those will be 3,000 new jobs. When we announce the expansion in Richardson, those will be 600 new jobs. So when we're getting into these thousands of people, that's also taking into account attrition as well as our population that we are projecting over the next 5 to 7 years that may be retiring from TI. That's also dependent upon the demand that we have through just for semiconductors themselves. So what we know today is we are in a little bit of a downturn, meaning some folks are pausing some of the production that's happening. However, we anticipate that that's going to go back up very quickly. We are going to be positioned when that goes back up very quickly to be in a good position to be able to take advantage of when the demand goes back up. So those are some of the factors that play into that. Our biggest need right now are technicians that actually work in those factories. And so what that means is these are candidates that have a high school diploma and some type of certification, candidates that have an associate's degree, and also candidates that have the facility support around these expanded manufacturing facilities. So not only do we need to have the manufacturing happening, but we need to support the facilities around it. So those are high school diplomas, those are high school diploma with a certificate, and those are also associate's degree. That's our biggest need. We also anticipate that when companies that have announced they're expanding in Texas and also nationwide, so all of our competitors as well as companies that are our customers as well, Samsung, Tesla, those types of things. When their expansion happens and they open their facilities as well, we anticipate that that's going to also put a lot of pressure on four-year degrees, especially in engineering, mostly electrical and computer engineering. So we are looking, our short-term needs are for those technicians with those two-year degrees, but we're anticipating that very soon that same pressure will also be put on four-year degrees, bachelor's, master's, and PhD students. So when we're working on this solution, we're of course trying to address our short-term needs of more folks that have electronics and mechanical skills that are needed for our manufacturing, but then also supporting those students because we still need that pipeline that's going into those bachelor's, master's, and PhD programs as well. So we're trying to look at it as a whole with still addressing our short-term needs of technicians for manufacturing, but also looking at very soon it's going to be all across from a high school diploma all the way to a PhD. There's going to be added pressure for folks to have those. And again, that is mostly around electronics. What we're seeing is programs that are built really focus more on the mechanical piece of it and not as much on the electronics piece. So that's where we have a huge opportunity for growth, is helping kids understand that electronics are actually pretty cool and that's something that they would like, getting them going into that. I will tell you, one of the gatekeepers for kids going into electronics at the 2-year level and electrical engineering at the 4-year level is the math. And so we have to continue to push and have kids understand that decisions they make on what math they're going to take in high school actually impact what programs they're going to have access to when they finish high school. And so I'm not saying that everybody needs to have calculus. However, everybody needs to understand the math that's associated with electronics and also with electrical engineering. And so those are some of the things that we're working with, as Janie mentioned, with these outreach folks, making sure that they understand, hey, these are the types of skills that are needed, but more importantly, this is also the classes that you need to be taking in high school to be prepared to be highly successful in these programs.
Thanks, Eric. And you're already sharing some of the solutions, which is cool. I'm not surprised. But Janie, what do you see as some of the significant obstacles in meeting the needs that Eric was just describing?
Money. Isn't that always the obstacle? So we are working with Eric, we are working with TWC to see what grants we can come up with. One of our solutions is that as he and I have toured these schools, and we have a fairly new high school in Denison, which is it's adjacent to Sherman. And in Sherman, we have one that's a year, I guess it's its second year, so it's 2 years old, $164 million high school, and it has this amazing CTE wing. So those two schools have our largest population of students in the Workforce Solutions Texoma area. So we are hopefully going to be able to develop some type of grant funding so that we can put some of the labs into those high schools. If we could put the lab for the one first electronics course that they need, if we could have that in the high schools so that the students could take that as undergrads in high school, then TI is talking about having labs, some type of lab, maybe even in their old facility, so that we could do the second part of it, people could go to that location. So those are some of the things we're looking at. But our greatest obstacle right now is getting people to think about the future. And that's another item that the outreach specialists help us with, because the more we can drill into these kids from middle school forward that you need to start making choices, and those choices will make a difference in the rest of your life. Doesn't mean you have to work at TI forever, but if you went to work there, you could get your education for free. And I'm one of those people who just really cannot stand it when kids have student loans. I just hate it when they graduate with these huge debts. So if we can figure ways that these students can have a quality education and somebody else pays for it, we'll let Eric's people pay for it.
Get
over
out your
here.
checkbook, Eric.
So
We want them to work at TI for life. Let's just be clear. We know what she's saying. Let's be clear.
yeah, well, we all have those. I want my people to stay forever too. But anyway, it's one of the things that we have been so pleased with working with TI. And at SEDCO, I see all these deals that are coming in. Right after they announced their $30 billion plant, Global Wafers came in and said, well, we're going to build, because they're a supplier of TI, and it's good for them to be within 10 minutes of the plant. So they said, why don't we build in Sherman? And we were competing with North Korea and Ohio on that one, and it's a $5 billion plant. And they will be making the wafers that these guys make the chips on. So, we have lots of people coming in who need people who are skilled. But what we really love about TI is that they have been so good. And as Eric will tell you over and over, we want to raise all ships, not just the ones that come work for us. But as we educate these kids, and if we can get these labs into the high schools, they might go to work for any number of people, but we're educating the community, which is just going to help us, because that means educated parents are going to help their kids become educated, and it goes on and on.
Thanks, Janie. So I think now would be a great time to turn things over to Dr. Tran to talk a little bit about education. So I know Dallas College is highly involved in supporting many different types of industries, and I think y'all have a history in supporting the semiconductor industry already. If you could touch on that, and then maybe we can talk a little bit more about this upcoming project.
Great, yes. So we're very proud to have this long-term collaboration with Texas Instruments. It goes back probably 10 years or more. So in the early days, our faculty worked with TI engineers to develop an electrical engineering technology AAS, and that was kind of like the TI degree, right, for a long time, and that was sufficient to provide the training for new students who would come through, or even incumbent workers at TI who would, because of the tuition support, come and earn their associate's degree in that EET program. Well, with this recent expansion and the need, as you've heard the numbers of the jobs that will be needed in the technician area, Eric reached out to us 2 years ago, which is about the time that I had joined Dallas College, and we really did a deep dive, got all hands on deck. At this time, Dallas College then had already restructured into one Dallas College, so we had the advantage of pulling resources from multiple campuses that had different programs to then sit down with the subject matter experts, engineers, manufacturing, plant managers, operators, to really dive into what the skills competencies that were needed. And so from those discussions, what came out of that was kind of this, I didn't bring it with me today, but this Lego, building blocks, kind of stackable credentials, where we have level 1 certificates that stack into the Associates of Arts, Associates of Applied Science degrees of the AAS. So what's evolved now is that we have 3 AASs that serve varying needs, not only for the semiconductor industry, but all, advanced manufacturing in the North Texas area. So we have the EET that's been enhanced now with semiconductor manufacturing and vacuum technology, so that there's more emphasis leaning towards that, so that we can train students for what TI needs. We have a new robotics and industrial automation AAS, and that's critical because all of these new fab facilities that are coming online are going to be automated. So we're not needing frontline operators of the equipment, but we need to train technicians that can troubleshoot and repair these automated machines when they go down, right? So because we need to keep the process going. And then we also have our electromechanical AAS, which speaks to the multiple skills that are needed, where you need the electrical, the mechanical, PLC, fluid power. Sorry, I'm getting into the weeds here, but just to illustrate to you that there is not a one-size-fits-all solution, so I think that's important. The other piece is the stackable credentials. So we built out a level 1 electronics technology certificate. That's an 18-hour certificate that's actually common in all 3 AASs. And then we have industrial automation level 1 certificate, and then a mechatronics technology certificate. So one of the things that's been really, I think, Grayson is the college that's right there in Sherman, right? And then we have Collin College, and then Dallas College that's engaged in this work. And then with the Megaregion, we'll be reaching out to Tarrant County Community College system and neighboring colleges as well in this work, because we feel like we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We have the curriculum, that we've worked for the past 2 years with TI to develop, so then it's a matter of sharing that out. And one of the differences between what Grayson's doing and what Dallas College is doing is in the way that we deliver the curriculum. So the curriculum, if you line them up, they're like, 95% of the same, right? Maybe some different course numbers and so forth, but the way that we deliver the curriculum varies, right? So, for example, the level 1 certificates, we're doing that as one option, is that we're delivering that as fast track. So what that means is 40 hours a week for 12 weeks. You earn that 18-hour credit hour certificate, right? And we do it in our CE continuing education, but we have pathways that will convert that to credit once they do their on-the-job training, through a credit co-op. So we've developed all these processes, but that allows us to really address these adult learners, right? Is that you can come in and in 12 weeks, 3 months, get that level 1 certificate, then go another 3 months, get another level 1 certificate. By the time you do that, you're only short like 2 or 3 technical courses and the 5 general education courses, and you have the AAS, right? So the in-between times, you could be hired on as a technician intern and receive the support to finish out your AAS. So I think that stackable model is really critical. Another model that we'll be expanding, and you had mentioned apprenticeships. We've adopted the FAME model, which is the Federation of Advanced Manufacturing Education model, where there are groups of industry partners that form FAME chapters, and it's an earn and learn apprenticeship type model. So TI, for example, will overlay the FAME onto the EET AAS on our Richland campus. So they'll be employed as technician interns, or initially possibly like maintenance operators. And then they'll go to work 3 days a week and then go to school 2 days a week as a cohort moving through, and then in 2 years, they'll have earned the AAS, right? So they get the combination of the hands-on application of their training as well as their training. So, and then we're also very cognizant about what I was showing you on the demographics of the diversity of the population, being very strategic and intentional in developing training programs that are located in the southern area, so that we don't leave out, the population for these opportunities. So we're going to overlay the FAME program onto our electromechanical technology AAS at our Mountain View campus in the south. We also have community-embedded workforce development centers, which are small centers embedded in their community where the transportation barrier isn't an issue, right? Because that's some of the things that we're running into is like, it's not necessarily that if you build it, they will come. Because in order to go get there, how many, light rail or buses or transportation, but if we have it right there in the community, we're able to deliver the level 1 fast track right there in our workforce development centers. Our workforce development centers right now have the more state-of-the-art equipment than our campuses, so we're doing that at Lancaster Fair Park, and then investing over $1 million in renovating our Garland Center, which this summer we're piloting a program of TI is going to train some of their incumbent workers to upskill with their certificates on their way to earning an AAS. So I know I shared a lot, but I just wanted to, kind of give all the different flavors.
Yeah, no,
And I want to add a little bit, if you don't
Yeah.
mind.
I do. No,
If
I'm
y'all, those of you that are in this work, you can see how that degree program, what's happening with Workforce Solutions as well as the Texas Workforce Commission, how all of that is intertwined. And that's where we're also trying to figure all this out, because our manufacturing footprint goes across 3 Workforce Solutions offices. And so we early on pulled together not just those 3 offices, but also the surrounding Workforce Solutions as well, to share what we're working on, because we also know throughout the state the Workforce Solutions offices do all the programs, but there's some that they do well. And so we're trying to divide and conquer to figure out, okay, who can tackle this part, who can tackle this part, who can tackle this part, because that's what's going to take for these volumes, not just for us, but also for the other suppliers that are coming into the region. And so that's another piece that I just want to make sure that we highlight too, is not only are all the programs impacted by this, but also it's a large region. And the other thing I wanted to point out too is, so Dr. Tran and I have been working for multiple years too, because even initially you saw the numbers of, in the southern part of Dallas, the number of what we call underserved, underrepresented. And initially when we started, we talked because there weren't even degree programs there for them to come to work for us. So if you look in the bottom of Dallas, if you look in that bottom left, and then the top right is where our manufacturing is. And so even having access for those people to come to work where our manufacturing current footprint is. So now the challenge is those programs are now offered. If you look in the bottom left, there's 100,000 kids in that region. Those 100,000 kids did not have degrees to be able to work in the top right of Dallas. And so you'll see that little microcosm, now we're expanding that beyond to this mega region. And so we're also working, and that's why the challenge is, okay, take what we did, and like Dr. Tran said, let's not recreate the wheel. Let's simply expand it. And so we are also looking at how do we also bring the resources that are needed to be able to make sure that we're making an impact in this as well, because you can see just the sheer area of that mega region.
Yeah.
And so it's going to take multiple Workforce Solutions offices, multiple people to be able to address that, because it doesn't do any good for us just to serve TI. Because if our suppliers can't get the workforce that they need, we're going to struggle anyway. So we have to, that's what we meant by build up the whole mega region, because we need to support everybody, and everybody needs to be able to hire the talent that they need so that we can all be successful. And the one thing that Janie and I have had multiple conversations about too is, so we have advanced manufacturing, and that advanced manufacturing term is used, I think, a little bit more across all manufacturing, but there's a difference in highly advanced manufacturing and just advanced manufacturing. And we try to lump those things together. And so we are saying we don't need to bulldoze the programs that exist. We need to expand and enhance those, because already the manufacturing folks that are in the region need that talent as well. So we can't pull all that talent away from them. Otherwise, they're going to struggle as well. And some of those could be suppliers to us as well. So just wanted to level set that yes, TI, and we're the 9,000-pound gorilla. That's what I call it. But we have to support everybody in the region too, because who knows when a year from now we may need a company that's in Sherman to do something for us, and if they can't get the talent to do that, we're going to struggle. So just wanted to highlight
No,
that as well.
that is great.
Could I add something?
Yes.
Sorry. So
I feel like this is getting out of control really
I
fast,
know,
y'all.
I know.
We-
I'll talk fast, but I want to make sure that we
Trying to
are,
keep us in line.
y'all have all spoken for me. Y'all have done a great job describing the things that Texas Workforce Commission helps with. The unique part about this project in general is that these areas are all working together. The colleges are working together, the workforce boards, the EDCs, all of the players. There's non-territorial folks here, so they're all partners. The consortium has come together, and we can use this and replicate it throughout the state for other industries. And I also think that from what's great about what Eric just talked about is that the programs are non-proprietary, so they can go into any college and help raise the level across the board. It's not just for TI, the courses.
Can you briefly touch on the project that we're considering right now for
Sure.
Skills Development Fund?
Sure. So there is a Skills Development Fund application in the process of evaluation. There's two different colleges, Dallas College and Grayson College, and there's two different, if I get this wrong, correct me, there's two different programs. One is the fast track that Dr. Tran talked about, and the other one is a lengthier project. So these are both pilot programs. They are with TI's current employees, so we're trying to decide, after this is all said and done, which one worked best. And I'm sure TI is like, we want the fast track, but that's the gist of the project, so that will help fund.
And these employees are all being paid during the training, whether they are going to school full-time or whether they are going to school and working part-time. That's all paid, and then I think, if I'm remembering this correctly, those additional credits, that what Dr. Tran was talking about, those things like English and things like that, that maybe aren't necessarily considered technical training and won't be part of the Skills Development Fund project, TI is supporting those, right?
Through educational assistance, yes.
Yeah.
So for the people that finish this program through the Skills Development Grant, they will have all the hands-on technical learning they need. And then if they choose to finish their associate's degree with the 5, what we call core courses, your English, they can do that through educational assistance. So they can finish a full associate's degree with no money out of their pocket.
Yeah, that's great. And I want to go back to something you had mentioned earlier, again, emphasizing the mega region. Janie did a great job in looping in the workforce solutions teams from all throughout that mega region. Janie, can you touch on that quickly? I know we're going to be leaving time for questions.
Well, first I want to thank Dallas College for coming up with the name Texoma Megaregion. You guys, you talked about, no territorial stuff. Well, but we're always a little territorial, And I couldn't wait to tease my friend Lori at Dallas about the fact that it's not the Dallas Megaregion, it's the Texoma Megaregion. So, we did reach out to all of our Workforce Solutions partners, and one of the things that I love about the workforce system in Texas is that the executive directors of the workforce boards have always been friendly to one another, and we've always been more than willing to help. So I put out the word. Not everybody could come to Dallas, to Eric's office, but they tuned in via Zoom so that they got to be a part of it and find out about it, because it is going to affect even more than this Texoma mega region, because we're going to have people from all over the world coming to work at TI. Right now, housing has gone crazy because, we've got to have a place for these people to live. Apartments, houses are going up every single day. So we have worked with those other workforce boards, and we'll continue to do so, because we want these programs to spread into all those areas. And as much as we'd like to say we're going to get a job for everybody in Sherman, most people who want to work in Sherman are already working. So, you know, it's a tough market right now to think about finding 16,000 people.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, I know I saw at least one hand go up during the presentation, so if it's okay with everybody, we'll see if anybody has any questions and then have a few closing comments. And I totally caught Tracy off guard, but she's very flexible. Does anybody have any questions?
There's one over there against the wall.
Excuse me.
Hi, good morning. Linda Ross with TWC, Adult Education and Literacy. First off, I want to say I used to work for TI. 18 years. I started at 18, and TI paid for my associate's degree and bachelor's degree, and it was such an incredible experience. Like I said, I started at 18 in manufacturing, went on to work in marketing and marketing communications, traveling around the U.S. So it
And
is
look at you now. Look at you
and
now.
look at me now. Look at me now, right? What a foundation. So I can't push TI enough because I don't have to pay on my degrees, right? The other thing, too, is I'm wondering, how is AEL playing a part of this? You mentioned ESL. You mentioned some of our youth. Just wanting to understand AEL's part.
We have a really great AEL program in Texoma at Grayson College. They have worked tremendously throughout the last few years to bring that program up to make sure that it's good. Dwana Forster and her team have done a great job. They are working with Eric, they're working with us. We have all been involved in that because we know that if people don't have that basic education, we're not going to be able to get that high school diploma or go any further. So that's a pool of people that we are definitely looking at.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked that. I know we had touched on apprenticeship, we touched on skills development fund, we now touched on AEL, but then we're also looking at other programs.
Yes.
Did you want to mention any of those?
Well, we want to look at everything. We're looking at Voc Rehab, any of the programs that we have in the Workforce Solutions offices. We want to be sure, and of course, near and dear to my heart are the people with disabilities who might be able to work within the TI system. And I have told my employers for the last 2 or 3 years that we're going to have to think outside the box. We can't always do 8 to 5 work. We can't always do education 8 to 12. My college people at Grayson are a little tired of hearing me say that. Marcia said I caused the president to get up and go to a different table the other day because I was pestering him about, you've got to think outside the box. You've got to have courses different times, not just 8 to 12, Monday through Friday. So, all of those things are things that we have to think about. And I'm always telling them, we've got a lot of people out there who are not working but would like to be working if they had a flexible schedule to take care of their children or, different things like that. So, yes, we are looking at that, thinking about that, talking to our employers about that as well to try to reach those other pockets.
Great. Any other questions? Okay. Kristie, I'm going to turn back to you. I know you mentioned that you think that this can happen in other areas, other regions of Texas as well. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Sure. I'm trying to pick an area where I know there's a strong industry. South Texas, the steel industry has really taken off. And obviously they need highly skilled folks for that as well. So we've been putting together or looking at projects that would include Skills Development Fund, high demand job training, Texas Industry Partnership, some other way to purchase equipment for the training. And as Eric mentioned, there's all sorts of ancillary businesses that go along when that industry comes in. So that area is booming, need houses just like everywhere else in Texas. But I do think developing the partnership, like with the Del Mar College, Coastal Bend, all of those different areas coming together to serve the common good is what is what they're doing, and that can be put together for the rest of the state in different areas.
Thank you. And Eric, kind of going back to you, as the employer on the panel, what can Workforce Solutions, what can TWC do better to support this type of project? You know, not always necessarily semiconductor, but support a project of massive scale or massive workforce training needs. What makes it easier, better for you?
So one thing that we had to have conversations early on that we were part of is, so we're a large corporation, so getting things done sometimes takes a little while to do that. So we've had to be transparent and put together some projections of what we'll need over the next several years, because, you know, as the grants come out and all that, sometimes we can't meet the deadlines of when those are due. And so we've been very transparent about needs and all of that, so that then we can figure out what is the right timing for that, how can we get the right employees in that. We were luckily able to do this pilot program in a shorter amount of time, but as we're looking at the number of people that we're going to need to even expand their skills through skills development and other things, we've got to figure out the timing of all of that, because we can't pull everyone out of our factory. Otherwise, we don't have, you know, even though it's the most advanced, you still have to have people maintaining stuff there. So without breaking production, we're trying to figure out what is the right cycle to be able to do that. So we put a little bit of strain on just the timelines and the deadlines for some of the existing programs. So they've been very good about talking about, okay, maybe it's not this cycle, but maybe it's next cycle. So really being able to communicate and talk about what could that look like going forward. That's one of the things that we've had to look at. And also, because it's serving all of Texas, making sure that we're also being transparent about those needs so that planning can happen throughout. Because we said at some point, you know, between the semiconductor manufacturing that's happening in Austin and also the semiconductor manufacturing that's happening in the Texoma Megaregion, it's going to put a strain on all resources in the state. And so really being able to plan out so that those can be effective in what we're going to need, we've had to be very transparent about what those needs are so those plans can happen. And that's also why we've pulled in multiple, you know, Workforce Solutions offices, all the other stuff, so that we can make those plans to be able to do that. Because just the volume of what we're doing is, you know, it's the largest investment in the state, but it's also some of the larger employee needs in the state. And so being able to plan out what is the timing of all of that, and then sharing all of that information has been critical. So luckily we have so far been able to do the things that we've needed in the timelines, but going forward we're going to really need to be able to project out what that need is going to be.
And I will add, in terms of transparency, he has also called us out whenever there's something that's not going to work.
I had
for
something
them.
on a slide that
Yeah,
they made
I saw it on the slide along with everyone else in the meeting for the first time, and I was like, wow, could we talk like behind the scenes? I'm just saying, like, you give me a call and like we could talk through that.
That's when we became friends.
Yeah, so I think having real conversations with the employers about what's working for them, what's not working for them, and I think Janie and Dr. Tran and Kristie are great examples of actually listening to the employer, because I think one of the things I actually heard earlier today was sometimes a college or another partner might ask you, okay, what are your needs? You tell them, and then they